now recognize Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of our witnesses. Mr. Zhao, a review of the 65 universities is in the so-called Power 5 athletic conferences found that the typical institution has 45 DEI staff members on its payroll. So 45 at the typical Power 5 institution, which is 4 times the typical number of employees devoted to supporting students with special needs. And by the way, colleges are increasingly offering, as you know, DEI programs of study for students. Given this growing number of DEI offices and positions on campus, how might that impact discrimination in other aspects of campus life?
You know, I want to tell you, China experienced similar things during Cultural Revolution. Colleges, institutions established revolutionary, committees to distract the, institution's main task, right? So I think our, educational institution should going back to its basic, its goal to really educate, to recruit the best and brightest, and provide the best education instead of promoting some ideology. That's my take on that.
So focus on education, academic excellence. Is there any return on investment for this spending on DEI positions besides raising tuition costs for the university?
I have not seen that. I see the more negative impact, just like the Revolutionary Committee did to China about 50 years ago.
Thank you. Mr. Squires, I know this has been talked about today, but can you just characterize the difference for us again, between equity and equal opportunity? What is the difference? We use that term equity and what the goal of that is versus equal opportunity.
So the way equity is typically used in sort of common parlance is suggesting that people from all different types of backgrounds end up in the same place. But the actual definition of equity is the consistent and impartial application of a particular standard. So the equality of opportunity, again, to me, you're talking about being able to bring people from different backgrounds and, again, subject them to the same types of standards. So for instance, a city may say, we want to see SAT scores improve, so we will provide free testing at high schools across the city. Those types of things provide equal opportunities. Equity is when you turn around on the back end and say, and again, particularly in the college context, and say, okay, we see that everyone is not coming in with the same types of score, so now we're going to socially engineer the demographic balance on the back end.
I appreciate that, and I would submit that the focus on equity is perpetuating the harm done from previous years of discrimination and a lack of equal opportunity. Wouldn't you suggest that those who support equal opportunity should also support school choice?
Absolutely. I believe school education choice, whether through the expansion of charter schools, vouchers, particularly education savings accounts, has to be one of the highest priorities as we move forward in a world post preferences. But a lot of people like to talk about race as it relates to higher education, but here's how the interaction of race, class, education, and politics actually works today. Black progressives, particularly politicians in the media, will rail against school choice on the K through 12 level, particularly vouchers, oftentimes being supported by teachers' unions. They send their own children to private schools.
Right.
They summer on Martha's Vineyard, and then when it's time to apply to Harvard, they turn around and cite education disparities in the inner city to justify why their children need racial preferences. So to me, if anyone wants to talk about race and education and outcomes, and they are not for education choice, I think that's a big problem. And I'll submit, I'll make a quick policy suggestion for the committee's hearing. I think any elected official, regardless of their jurisdiction, who stands against school choice should be required to send their child to the lowest performing school in their district. Because if the schools are not good enough for your child, then they shouldn't be good enough for mine either.
Well said, Mr. Squires, and I encourage everyone on the committee to support my Choice Act, which allows federal dollars to go and follow the child to the educational opportunity of their choice, or the parent's choice, and it particularly, obviously, is for those who are of lower income. Last question, Ms. Salmon, thank you for being with us today. Fairfax County in Virginia, the state where I'm from, has moved towards equitable grading. Could you talk briefly about that equitable grading and the harm that's being done from that?
I'm not familiar with the policy.
Okay, well, equitable grading is Its stated goal is to combat institutional bias and eliminate racial disparities in grade outcomes, and it removes grade penalties for late assignments. And so, but I see I'm out of time as well. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Courtney.